with you.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you all are very much enthusiastic to start a vibrant afternoon session of our ongoing FDP. After a very interesting and informative inaugural session, we are now heading towards the first session of our one-week online faculty development program on research methodology in social science, humanities, commerce, and management. Today, we have with us an eminent personality to handle the very first session of the FDP, Dr. Johnny Johnson, Professor, SMBS, MG University, Kottayam. He will be dealing with the topic Introduction to Research and Identification of Research Problem. I invite Ms. Vidya Krishna, Assistant Professor, Providence Women's College, to welcome Professor Johnny Johnson to the session.
A very good afternoon to everyone present here. With a warm greeting, it's given me greater pleasure to extend my warm welcome on behalf of Providence Women's College. Let us begin the first session of our FTP program on the topic Introduction to Research and Identification of Research Problem by our resource person, Dr. Johnny Johnson. He is a professor, School of Management and Business Study, Mahatma Gandhi University, Kottayam. He is also the Honorable Director of K.N. Raja Study Center for Planning and Center State for Financial Relations. He has over 19 years of academic experience and holds PhD from Kannur University, MPhil Madurai Kamaraj University, FTP under IIT Calicut. He also serves in companies like Reliance Petroleum, Sea Tires Limited, Maxworth Orchid India Limited. Apart from that, Sir has 43 publications and 21 conference proceedings. Dr. Johnny Johnson is a right and eminent personality to deal with the session. Sir, I happily once again welcome you to the session, and I also welcome all the participants.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I believe I'm audible to all of you.
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for that brief introduction. First of all, I need to thank the organizers for having invited me for handling this session. I think sometime back, a few days back, it was a request by your coordinator asking me whether it will be possible for me to handle this session. So I wholeheartedly agreed, and that's how I'm here today. So before I start, let me first thank the organizers, especially Providence Women's College, the principal, the other organizers, and each one of you for having given me this opportunity today to discuss with you this relevant topic. But before I start this session, I have got a few requests. I know it is an afternoon session, and most of you would be feeling sleepy. And more so, it is difficult because as teachers, when you attend certain sessions, it is more so difficult. So we always blame the students for such things and all, but I think teachers are the ones who should actually lead by examples. So especially when an afternoon session like this is being organized, there's a request from my side. I want most of the teachers to switch on their cameras so that I could see you. So I normally don't address at blackboards or whiteboards or maybe screens. I normally address participants. So if I can see some of the faces, if you people can switch on your cameras so that I can see, because I'm not used to handling classes looking at screens and all. So please switch on your cameras. I can see you. I will always be visible throughout. I will always keep my cameras on. So when I switch on my cameras and I request all of you also to follow the same thing. Okay, and I think it's since I handle communication also, this is one way of effectively communicating. It is always said it is better to look eye to eye and speak. It shows certain amount of sincerity. If at all there are some problems, we can solve the problems then and there. So that's the best way to communicate. So I request all of you that way to switch on your cameras. I will look at each one of you and I'll speak. You also can look at me face to face and we can interact. Even though it is an online session, let us not give a feel as to this is an online session. Okay. Now that is a ground rule. So with that, let me start. It was a hectic day, first of all, for me, because I've started since morning. I was associated with a similar activity few hours back, and still it's continued now. There was a doctoral committee meeting which was taking place, and it's still ongoing in our department in the university. So I was part of that, and I just took a break and saying that I've got a session today and you people have to excuse me. That's why I'm here. So my presentation today, I think the topic was already shared, and the topic was introduction to research and identification of research problem. I know most of you who are attending this program would be doing some research or the other. Some would have already completed their research by way of getting a PhD degree. Some would be in the process of getting a PhD degree. Some, even after getting a PhD degree, we have to continuously do research because our profession demands that we are in constant touch with our research work, coming out with new things, new innovations, or maybe new theories, new knowledge. All these things we are supposed to be, because we are the ones who are responsible for all these things. So we are in the continuous process of research. Now to start with, what is research and why research? That is a basic question we have to understand. So I have broken my presentation topic into three important sessions, three important parts. The first part is what is research and why research. And before let me also tell you, I would like to have a face-to-face interaction only, because even though I've got a PPT slide with me, I don't wish to actually show that, because I know when I show a PPT slide, then all of you will be disappearing from the screens. So I don't want to have that. Okay. So I can share you the PPT if you want later on. Okay. So don't disappear from the screen. So the question is, what is research and why research? I think some responses, all of you know it. What is research?
Excuse me, sir. Research is a search for knowledge in a scientific manner.
Correct. Search for knowledge in a scientific manner. Now, in a scientific manner, I just keep it separately because that is what professionals do. But research is something, it is basically, I can say, search for knowledge. It comes from the thirst for knowledge. There should be a thirst for knowledge, because each one of us, including all individuals, we have got a thirst for knowledge. The curiosity to know something, it starts from a small kid, a small child, to the most grown-up people also. So the curiosity to know something. So the inquisitiveness, I would say, the inquisitiveness in each one of us to know something. Now that thirst is what actually drives us towards research. Now, as I said earlier, all of us are involved in some sort of a research or the other. We search for new knowledge. We continuously search and search. That is repeated search. In short, repeated search is what we call it, research. So repeatedly searching for new things. We are all involved in that, starting from a kid to a. But as professionals, we are supposed to do our research, because we are the ones who are supposed to do research in a professional manner, because our profession demands that we are supposed to do scientific research. So scientific research is slightly different from the normal research work which I've said earlier, which is a general one which all of us undertake. So we have to understand that we as individuals are supposed to be involved in scientific research. So research is this. Now, why research? Partly I've answered the question. Why research? If you have to develop new knowledge, because as professionals, we are supposed to be involved in generating new knowledge, and that knowledge we have to share it to our students, and this process has to continue. For ages, this has been going on, and we are now given the responsibility to generate knowledge and share the knowledge. That is dissemination of creation of knowledge and dissemination of knowledge. And who are the best people? Teachers. As teachers, we teachers are responsible for that. So for us, it is part of our profession. So that is more important. Now, what is scientific research? What is scientific research? Because when we do undertake research, we are supposed to do scientific research. So what is it? How will you define a scientific research? Can somebody tell me? Please, please try it out, because there's nothing like a right or wrong answer for all these things. Our own ideas come out. Yes?
Searching for knowledge in a scientific manner and verifying new facts, new tools, and new technologies, developing new theories. This is basically
Yes.
scientific research.
Yes. Yes. Now, scientific, the moment I say scientific, it has got, whatever ma'am has said is absolutely right. It has got more to do with a systematic approach. When I say scientific, what I mean is there is a systematic approach which I need to adopt. When we professionals are involved in research, we are supposed to follow a systematic approach. Now, what is a systematic approach? Now, systematic approach is what normally is taught to each one of us when we do a post-graduation. That is something called research in research methodology, in research subjects. We are told to undertake research in a systematic manner. And it is a prerequisite for doing a good scientific research. Now, the reason why I'm saying this is a prerequisite, there are many researchers, many people who wish to do research after their post-graduation, who run after the supervisors asking for whether the vacancy is there for me to undertake the work under you, without actually knowing or studying the research theory well. Now that leads to a very difficult situation. So if you want to do a scientific research, it is important, the prerequisite is you have to know the theory of research. What is systematic? What is research? What is a systematic research methodology? So only with that, after knowing all these things, you have to approach for research. Now, this is a common thing which was noticed for quite a long time. And there are a lot of rectifications made. If you look at the recent orders or notifications for UGC, they have realized these things. They found that people are running after research, running for research, without actually knowing the theory of research, how the research has to be done. And what it leads to? It leads to substandard research which are not worth publishing, research which are not accepted for publications, because it doesn't stand the scrutiny of the peer group members. So these are the things which we face, and that is why, if you look at the regulations which are formulated by UGC, they had made some subjects compulsory in your first coursework period itself. And what is that? The most important subject which they've said is a thorough study on the research methodology. Research methodology, they have said. Second thing, they've also insisted on bringing in a subject called as research ethics. I don't know whether you people who are doing research now would say that. That is the fourth paper which has been added from the last 2 years onward. They last year, I believe, they've introduced that. And they made it mandatory for all universities in the country and all research institutions to compulsorily offer these 2 papers and ensure that only those people could progress further who clear these 2 subjects. So this leads to, so for a scientific research, it is very important that you have knowledge on the research methodology part, because it only explains you what is systematic research, and also you need to have some knowledge about research ethics. Now, research ethics I'll come later on. Now, I'll just go into the first part, research methodology. What is the scientific research? What are the steps which are involved in scientific research? When I say systematic, I mean it involves certain steps which is to be adopted in a very systematic manner. Okay, now coming to the next question. When I say systematic, yes, research is organized in various steps. What are the important steps in research? Can somebody tell me? What are the important steps in research? From where you'll have to start research? How will you start research?
Sir, am I audible?
Okay, you're audible, yeah.
So first finding out what your research objective is and your question, and then probably doing more research on that.
Yes. Yes. No, there's nothing wrong. Whatever you say is what people think people do. Yes, what you say is correct, partly correct, but not fully correct. Now, when I say research, yes, what you said, normally all of us, we look at what is research objective, go further into that, go to the next step. That is what we do. Nothing wrong in that. But to have a better idea of all these steps, it is always better to understand the broad steps which are involved in research. Of course, every research, if you see broadly, it is classified into 5 important steps. broadly. Any literature, if you read broadly, what are they? First steps is identification of a research problem. Second one is formulating a research methodology. Third one is collection of data. Fourth one is analysis of data. And the fifth one is presentation of your findings. Broadly, I'm saying. This is what we all teach at postgraduate level to our students. So research involves 5 broad steps. Ready? And in the first step is obviously identification of research problem. Second one is formulating a research methodology for our work, Third one is collection of data. Fourth one is analysis of data, analysis and interpretation. And the fifth one is presentation of our finding. This is what we all teach to our students. But still, this is broadly for easy understanding, because as you said, as we all know that when we start introducing a topic, we don't make things very complicated to our students. Neither we would like to understand things in a very complicated way. We do things in a very simple manner. And when I say 5 steps are involved, it sounds very easy. It sounds very easy and something which is doable. Now there are something more into that. It doesn't stop there. Something more into that. And the first one, when I say identification of a research problem, the first I say identification of a research problem. Now that is a very difficult step. And it is always said that identification of the research problem is the most difficult step in research. It is the most difficult step in research. Most of us, while doing research, we end up identifying some topic. We go after that topic, do some research. And if midway through the research only you will understand that the topic which you have selected sometimes is not actually a topic worth researching. I think people who have undertaken research would know it. I am saying from my own experience itself. The struggle starts midway through, because we feel that we are not reaching anywhere. Probably we start looking at the problem. Then we say, I could have decided or designed my question in a different way. My research problem should have been something different. That's when we give maybe request for changing the topic, changing the title, changing all these things. And there is again a process which is involved, and we get through. So the identification of a research problem, the first step in research, is the most difficult step. And why it is the most difficult step, I will tell you. If you have identified your problem properly, because there is a process for identifying, and if you have adopted these steps for identification of the problem, and if you have done it thoroughly, it means the research is easy and it can be completed within the stipulated time. Problem happens when that topic is not properly selected after good review. That's when the problem starts. No, I'll just come to that later on. Let me just come to, I just gave you the broad steps which are involved in research. Now come to the very specific steps. The specific steps, of course. Specific steps, if you break down these 5 important steps further, you'll have to break up into 12 steps. 12 steps, which I call 12 steps of research. And I will list out each of these things now. It gives a better understanding. First step is identify the research question or the research problem. First one is identify the research questions or the research problem. Second one, the initial review of literature. The initial review of literature. The third step, distilling the question to a researchable problem. That is, distilling the research question to a researchable problem. Fourth one, continued review of literature. Continued review of literature. Fifth one, formulation of hypothesis. Formulation of hypothesis. Next one, determining the basic research approach. Determining the basic research approach. It is nothing but research design. Okay, I don't want to confuse further. It is determining the basic research approach is the 6th step. 7th step is identifying the population and sample. Identifying the population and sample. Eighth one is designing the data collection plan. Designing the data collection plan. Ninth one, selecting or developing data collection instruments. Selecting or developing data collection instruments. 10th one, choosing the method of data analysis. Choosing the method of data analysis. 11th one, implementing the research plan. Now, implementing the research plan means all these things you have already decided. Now you'll have to implement it with specific time durations. You implement it. Implementing the research plan. And 12th one is interpretation of results. Interpretation of results is the 12th one. Now, I have broken this entire, your 5 broad steps which I have said, I have broken up into 12. So that it explains to you all the steps which you need to do, you need to undertake in your research. These are very specific ones, like starting from identifying the research question, initial review of literature, distilling the research question into a researchable problem, formulation of, continued review of literature, then formulation of hypothesis. After that, again, determining the basic research approach, identifying the population and sample, designing the data collection plan, selecting or developing data collection instruments, choosing the method of data analysis, implementing the research plan, and interpretation of results. Now, when I've listed these steps, I know definitely you will be very curious to ask me a few questions on these steps. Like if you are not able to follow these steps, you can just ask questions now. I'll just explain to you. Is there any questions? I believe it is understandable, but still if you have got any clarifications required, I'll just stop. I'll stop here and I'll invite your questions. Because this is how you undertake a very serious research. Because you need to know, because often this review of literature is discussed only once. In research methodology class or in the research classes, we just tell you what is a review of literature. Faculty members tell the scholars about what is review of literature, but nobody knows. Now, please understand one thing. The soul and heart of a good research is a good review of literature. I'm again repeating that. The soul and heart of a good research is a good review of literature. That is why, that is where researchers need to spend a lot of time to review the literatures as much as possible. Unless otherwise your review is strong, you will not be able to do any good research. So I'm coming to that point now. Now, people often come to me because I am also as a research supervisor, faculty research scholars come to me and they discuss on research topics and all. The frequent question which I get is, sir, could you please suggest some research topics? Could you please suggest some research titles? There is nothing wrong, because it is always a supervisor is in a better position to suggest some topics. Why? Because a supervisor will have his own areas of interest in research. Because I have got certain areas of interest in my research, and I would definitely, if I suggest, I will definitely suggest topics in the areas of my interest. In areas of my interest. Why? Because it is easy, because I am also into that area. I have also read something in this area. I will be in a better position to guide my scholars if he or she joins me as a scholar. So I can collectively do a great job. So I always, but I will never advise that way. I would always want a researcher to come out with his own area of interest. Because why this is important is, then only I can understand whether they check the curiosity of that scholar. Whether that scholar is having that inquisitive mind to know something more. So if that comes, he comes out with his own ideas, his own problem area, it becomes easier for him, because I can say that definitely he will do his work in a very sincere manner, because this is something which he has identified, which he is inquisitive about. So if he takes that area, definitely he will be more compelled to complete it and do a good research, rather than getting a borrowed topic from me. That's another thing. Now here, coming to that is in brief about the research steps which I normally say. Now, most often, let me also tell one, most often research scholars, whenever they undertake a research, they don't follow these steps in their systematic way. I've listed out, broken up into 12 important steps. Research scholars often get confused as to, somebody told them that you are supposed to know research methodology. So in research methodology, where to start? Some start with understanding the statistical part, analysis of data. They say, let me know the analysis of data. Today it's becoming a big thing to study the SPSS and come out know thoroughly what is SPSS. The more you complicate the feeling which they think that you give a feeling to others that you are more knowledgeable. That's not the case. So statistics is employed only to interpret. And again, there also, unless otherwise you are strongly grounded in your theory, no statistics can help you. Reason, you should be thoroughly strongly grounded in the theory part of research. Only then, and then also understand the statistical part later on, because these two are connected. These are not disconnected things. So this is one biggest flaw which I've seen in most of the research scholars. When they come, they believe that knowing some of these SPSS tools and knowing all these things, I can complicate it and I can make things in such a way that, okay, people will not question anything more. Sorry. It's not the case. Good researchers know these steps very well. Okay. Now, the starting point of research. I have said, coming to the main area, starting point of research, I said, is identification of the research problem. How will you identify the research problem? As a research scholar, if we are planning to do a research, I'm supposed to have a research problem with me. From where do I get this research problem? Most of us have done research. Where do I get this research problem? Can somebody tell me? Where do I get this research problem? What is the source of my research problem? There are many researchers sitting here, people who have already done research, people who are planning to do research. Yeah?
So sometimes you want to research an area, either it's your of interest or you develop some sort of interest. So recently I read a little bit about behavioral economics, and that's very, very new to me. So I'm like doing a little bit of research on that area. So sometimes it's your, like you said, that curiosity, or you're wanting to know something and you don't have an idea about, so you want to do research in that area.
Correct. So obviously it all starts with your interest area. Somebody else wanted to speak here. Yeah, that's a very good approach. Yeah. Somebody
Sometimes
else.
you visit research libraries. There you can see the thesis, and then there also you can develop your area of interest.
Correct. Yes. Anything else? So basically, what maybe Suman ma'am is saying, or what Tanjot Singh is saying, is that it all starts. The basic thing, it has to come from your curiosity. Sometimes we think a bit, you get some ideas. What you do next? You don't immediately come out with a research. You go and probe that further. You may visit a library. You may read some materials related to that. What is that process? That process is what I've said, initial review of literature. What is that process which you're doing? An idea strikes you. Some idea comes to your mind. You cannot formulate your firm up on your title. What you do? You do your preliminary work in this area. The initial reviews. You go to the library. You take the necessary literature, maybe some journals, or maybe articles related to the area of your interest, which you have thought about. You take some textbooks to know the theory or concepts very well. So all these are the initial reviews. It is categorized as the initial review. You still haven't firmed up your research topic. Your interest area is very, very important. The first interest area which strikes you, you start developing on that area. You're just working on that area. And that is what I referred to as the initial review of literature. Got it? Now I wanted to explain that step. Now that is the most important thing. You will do it because there is no other way. You may sometimes consult, you review something, you get some information, knowledge, and people who come out with this, who are curious to know, we need not tell them what to do next. They will immediately go, maybe search internet, read some books, read some articles. They want to know something more about. So it will automatically happen. That is called as initial review of literature. So that is the starting point. Sometimes, no, the best process is always this way. That is, in areas of interest, areas of curious things which comes to your mind, it is better that you start from there, not somebody else's ideas. Somebody can tell you the broad areas. You will have to develop some, with your curious minds to get some ideas out there, and then you do the initial review of literature. Next, what happens? It is just an initial review of literature. That is to know more about that area. And more so, what you do is the initial literatures which you will pick up will be general textbooks, general news items, general articles, not research articles. Isn't it? General articles. That is to get some more clarity on all these things and all. Then what you do? As you advance further, you start maybe reading much better. You know that I'm not, then when you read this way, you think that you are not able to come to a specific researchable problem. While doing reading, the initial reading, what you realize that you are not able to come to a real researchable problem. There is a problem, idea which comes to you, but you're not able to come out with a researchable problem. Now, what is a researchable problem? Problems have been plenty in your surroundings, in various things. A researchable problem is you understand your strengths, your process which is to be adopted in a scientific research. Accordingly, a problem also need to be identified. So that is a researchable problem. That is another difficult step. Now, what you do next? You try to distill your broad curiosity. You had some broad curiosity in your mind, like why this is happening this way, or why is it not happening this way, some X is not. So all these things are broad areas. You start thinking further. Why don't I make it a real problem? Research and bring it to, if you have to, somebody ask me what is your problem, I should be able to define my problem properly. That is the thing. Next thing you should do. That is distilling the question, the broad research question, into a researchable problem. Now, in this process doesn't happen overnight. Let me tell you that this process doesn't happen overnight. It happens by constant review. It happens by constant review. So there is a connection between your initial review and your fourth step, which I said is the continuous review. That is the broad, because the once initial reviews, it's just on the broad parameters of the problem which you found. Then you get into the intense review. That is a continuous review, an intense review starts then. Now, in your intense review, what happens? You try to isolate studies which are very specific to your areas. You try to isolate studies which are very specific to your areas. I'll give you an example. As a marketing professor, my areas of interest is on branding, on distribution, on product management. When it comes to branding, I undertake studies in the area of positioning and segmenting. Now, these are my broad areas of study, interest areas of study. I would like to read do some work in the area of positioning or maybe segmenting. But that is my broad area. What is the specific thing which I want to explore? I have still not come to that area. Now, for that, in positioning, there are many things to be discussed. So, what I do, I generally pick up literature, maybe books or articles in the area of positioning. I look into the studies conducted in the area of positioning. There I find some studies being conducted in the areas of study on the points of parity and points of difference, POD and POP and POD studies on a particular message or maybe a particular positioning theme. I study that, I read that. Some studies would have been in the area of like segmenting on the basis of maybe some maybe psychographic variables. I study these things, I read all those things. Then I'm not able to firm up because segmenting and positioning are very closely related. I'm unable to come out as to what could be my possible area of interest, possible area of study. So I review and constantly review and look at the studies, how people have conducted these studies, because I am a novice now. When I begin my study, I am a novice. I don't know any of these things. So what I should do is I constantly pick up all the literature. I start reading one by one, and in that process, sometimes I get a feeling, why not I do something very similar to what this person has done, or maybe carry forward his work still to the next level. So I get an idea that way, because every good research article always ends up with what? Areas of future studies. If you have read a good article, you will say scope for future research or areas of future studies. It will always say it is a continuation of the scholar's work which is published, and he believes that there are few limitations on which I have worked. Maybe future research scholars could take up work from here. Very easy. Very easy. So what I'm trying to say is, it all comes from your reviews. Your reviews. Now, when I say reviews, it's easy. It is easy to say all these things and all. It is easy to say, and people may think, oh, it's very simple. Tomorrow onwards, I'll go and get something. It's not that easy, I'm telling you. Understanding each of the articles, I don't know. I do some exercises with my scholars and all, because initial 1 year, they are allowed to just review for articles only in their area. Sometimes they come up with some articles, I say, please. And what I do is, I ask them to review and make a presentation on each article, maybe in a week. I know the difficulty in understanding good research articles. I know most of you would be familiar with that. If you pick up a good research article and if you start reading it, you will understand there are many things which you are supposed to know. Many theories in which you are very shallow. We'll be very, because even though as teachers we pick up certain articles and all, we don't know most of these things. That's when I start looking at, if I have to understand an article completely, but I'm talking about the first article, to a beginner, if he picks up an article to study, a good research article in social sciences or in commerce or in management would be somewhere in the tune of, say, 15 to 20 pages. And that too in a good research. And when I talk about articles, I always refer to the refereed articles, not the ones which normally we find in our colleges and universities getting published, maybe without much of a content. And for the sake of publishing something, we often publish. And today UGC has become very strict in those areas also. Any complaint which is sent by a faculty member about any journal article saying that it has not met the standards which you have prescribed, immediately it is sent for review and it is hotlisted. It is removed from the UGC care list. You must have noticed that also. So UGC says the best articles would be the one which is appearing in Web of Science. I hope most of you know what is Web of Science, what is Scopus. And even Scopus is getting, now we are removing articles from Scopus also. Now Scopus have started getting money. If they get money, they are willing to publish in some of the journals. So there also they have scrutinized. I found the latest list, they have removed some of the Scopus listed journals also from the list. Some complaints would have gone, immediately they removed it. Because it comes under the category of paid articles. Because good articles are not, need not be paid. If it is a good article, it goes through the rigorous review process and it is getting accepted. Now, what is it? Now, that is, I look at those articles. I'll come to that part later on. I look at those articles. These are the articles one should pick up and start reading. I know, don't try to complete reading an article in one day. Don't keep benchmarks or maybe standards saying that I'll finish off in half an hour, 1 hour. It cannot be done if you're a beginner. But in the course of the time, if you have reviewed some 15, 20 articles, then you can say that, yes, I'll finish this review very fast. Because by then, you would have known how to write an article itself. Now, I saw there is one session which is kept for you to, which is on writing a research article. There is nothing to learn about writing a research article, I'm telling you. Just pick up maybe some 10 to 15 papers research in your research interest area. Start reading it in a very systematic manner, in a very committed manner. You will understand the steps, and whenever you pick an article, pick from the standard refereed journals, cited ones. Take maybe from, maybe I know some of the journals. And again, as a researcher, you should know which are the important journals to be referred in your area also. By the way, you should know that. So even in my area of studies, I know some of the journals which I normally refer to. One is Journal of Retailing and Consumer Services, because I'm more into the Journal of Brand Management. Then these are the very standard journals in my area of interest. So I look at these journals, I read these articles, and understanding and deciphering these articles itself is a laborious task. The first time it will take a lot of time. Second time also the time get reduced. Third time it will still get reduced. And if you're able to complete, if you complete reviewing maybe 15 articles, then you can say that I'll finish the review in probably 2 hours time. I can review and read the entire article and know. Why I'm saying this is, if you've read 15 articles and if you have understood the process, that means you know the steps in research, you are thorough with the research steps itself. A research steps, don't read it from the textbooks. That is okay in the initial part. But when you review an article, 15, 20 articles review, that means you are thorough with most of the, because whenever the first article when you read, you'll come to maybe a breaking point where you say, I don't know any of this, I can understand these things. Stop there and try to understand the concept which you have read, which you don't know. Try to understand from the textbook. Then come back to your article. Again, start complete reading. By the way, make a note, maybe a diary or a notebook, list out all these things. You are learning this way. You are learning research this way. And if you're able to do that, your process becomes easier. Now, when I say reviewing has to be done, what are the things you learn from review? What are the things you learn from review? So to crystallize to your researchable problem, I said you undertake this review, continuous review. The more you read, you come to that. You identify a clear area where you want to do research, because some of the areas which you thought earlier would have already been reviewed, already been studied by other research scholars. Already these topics would have been already researched by other research scholars. Now, the more reviews lead to a stage wherein you arrive at your research gap. You know what is research gap? By reviewing continuously, you arrive at a research gap. What is the research gap? Can somebody tell me?
So research gap is the area which are not covered by the previous literatures, and this is the problem which is uncovered.
Correct, exactly.
And the answer is yet to be find out. जैसे हम present अब जो research कर रहे हैं, उसमें हम उस research gap को meet out करने की कोशिश करेंगे, वो question जो अभी तक solved नहीं किए गए हैं previous literature में.
बिल्कुल सही कहा आपने, बिल्कुल सही कहा. So this is what is required. So in the process, when you, and how will you can't arrive at a research gap unless otherwise you do a good review. So here comes the importance of a good review. So you continuously review and you arrive at your research gap. Now, research gap is not something which you arrive at after having reviewed some 5 articles or 6 articles in your area. You should be 100% sure that the topic which you have selected or which you're planning to select is something which has not been researched by others. So to that extent, you will have to do the reviews and come to your identify the research gap. Now this research gap is later, it becomes your area of research. Your problem comes from there. Once you identify a research gap, you formulate your research questions, and that research questions becomes your research problem. Research problem become translated to your research questions. So this is how you arrive at your research problem. Now, I've said that this is how you are in. Then does review of literature only help you in identifying your research problem? Next question. Does review of literature,
please repeat your question.
Does review of literature only lead to your research problem identification, or does it do more than that?
More than that, sir.
Strategies. It tells you about the strategies what are to be adopted.
Yes. What else?
Methodology.
I'll tell you. You don't require any suggestions. You need not ask anything from anywhere, any expert, if you have done a good research review, if you have done a good review of literature. Because the answers to all your questions will come from your reviews itself. Like, for example, after having identified a research gap and a research problem, maybe questions related to your sampling, questions related to the method of analysis, questions related to the variables to be studied in your research, questions related to maybe interpretations, how to do. Now these are the questions which come next. For this again we struggle a bit, but if you have done a good review, your articles, if you read the articles properly, the answers to all these things will be available in the reviews itself. The first one, I'm asking, let me come to this one. The first one, questions related to sampling. Questions related to what should be your sample, or what is the sampling method. Now this, if you review some 20-30 articles, you can see what was a sample in all those studies, how that sample was picked up, all these things you know. So you can always discuss, when you go for a discussion with your research supervisor, you can always say, sir or madam, this is what I have reviewed and this is how they have done in all these research reviews. So why not we also do something related to that? So your discussion becomes fruitful and it leads to some, you can firm up on all these steps very fast. But without having done these things, reviews, and then going to research supervisor, asking questions to research supervisor, it becomes very difficult because the research supervisor is not a person who has done research in your area of interest. So it becomes very difficult. So you need to do all these. Second thing, after having done the formed upon your sampling, then the next question is, what are the variables to be studied for this? There again, variables, can the supervisor tell you the variables to be studied for your research? No. You will have to, what you'll have to do is, you will have to again reflect back on your articles which you have read in similar areas and see what are the variables which affect each of these. Maybe an independent, this phenomena or this independent variables is affected by dependent variables. Which are these dependent variables? So all these things comes only from your review. And it has to come only from your review. That is the most important thing. It should not come from elsewhere. It should not come from, because only you are only advancing from the existing knowledge, because these articles are the existing knowledge source which are available to you. So from there you are going to the next step. Not that you create something which is imaginary, or say that this is a variable without confirming it, and you carry forward your study. In that case, what happens is, when you complete your study, if you want to publish your work, it will never get published, because there is no literature to show that this is an variable which has to be studied for this phenomena. You got it? So it becomes, so your review actually helps you out in connecting to all these things. So review only tells you how, what variables to be studied, what are the sampling methods or sampling techniques to be adopted. It tells you how, after having taken, maybe how the analysis need to be undertaken. You look at the existing analysis done by research scholars or maybe researchers in the existing literature, and you adopt that in your analysis also, because that is the proven, vetted one which you can adopt easily. So everything should come from your reviews, and you can make some minor changes into all these things, but with your extra knowledge. Why this is important is, when you send your articles, for reviewing, when you send your articles for publications, all these things are scrutinized by the people who are reviewing this literature. You got the point? So I think some of you have already gone out of screen now. Please come back to screen. I want the cameras to be on. It becomes very difficult for me if all of you are, I don't know whether you people are sleeping or whether you are, if you want to have a cup of tea or something, you can have looking at me, no problem. Okay, so don't move away from the camera. So I get a feeling that all of you are sleeping then. Okay, so that is the importance of a review of literature. So review of literature is, that's why it's a review of literature is the soul and heart of a good research. Please understand that. Any doubts, any clarification in any of the steps which I have told you, listed out earlier, if you have, first go back to your reviews. First go back to your reviews, read it thoroughly, know it thoroughly, and then from that base knowledge, go have a discussion with your experts or your research supervisor. Without that, please don't do that, because you will again, because I'll tell you the part of the supervisor. Supervisor's job, somehow the supervisor feels, oh, this scholar is coming after me. Supervisor is not an expert in this area. But supervisor, out of all this, and say, okay, please continue. This is how you should do. Please continue. But that need not be correct method sometimes, because ultimately your work, if it has to be published, if your work has to be published, they don't look at, you can't that point of say that my supervisor told me to do this way. That is why I've done it. And if your article doesn't get selected, you're at loss, not the resource supervisor. Please remember that. So all these things need to, that is, I always tell my scholars that, look, you can get some additional information from me, that examples of how to do things and all. Plus, please don't ask me what to do. How to do, I can explain. Please don't ask me what to do. Okay, I will explain the steps. I'll tell you all these things. Please go back and understand from the reviews and then do it yourself. So your questions about analysis, questions about, next most important thing. If you have read my steps, the 12 steps which I have listed you, after having gone for a continued review of literature, then comes the most important step, which is formulation of hypothesis. Formulation of hypothesis. Now the next question is, what is hypothesis? What is hypothesis?
Tentative statement, validity remain to be tested.
Yes, once again, please. Yeah, that's something
Tentative statement.
Correct.
Validity remain to be tested.
Yeah, remain to be tested. That is a good way of putting it. But can you give it in a very understandable manner so that everybody can understand?
An assumption which has to be verified.
An assumption which has to be verified. Much more understandable. Correct. It is a good one. Yeah. Then anything else? An assumption
possible answers to the research question.
Very good. That is also very good. Yes. If you put it the last person, I think Sanish has said it good way. All three are correct. All three are correct. But as a researcher, if you understand it this way, hypothesis should be always your possible answers to your research question. It is your possible answer to your research. If you understand it this way, then what ma'am has said, Suma ma'am, it is correct. It is it's a assumption which is yet to be verified. Or maybe the other person, Bharat, has said it, tentative statement which is to be verified. Yes. Tentative statement. What is a tentative statement? It is a possible answer. What is that assumption? It is a possible answer which I'm assuming. So you understand this way. A hypothesis is nothing but after having formulated your research question, you having reviewed, because you formulate your research question having reviewed a lot of literature. By reviewing literature, you also know the possible answers. You also know how this will come up, isn't it? So people often ask this question, "Are yaar, how did you come to this answer?" It is not the empirical work which will answer your question. No, empirical works only validate your answers. But hypothesis is a tentative answer to your research question. And where did you get this tentative answer? From after having reviewed. That is why in that steps which I have told you, formulation of a hypothesis comes after detailed review of literature. So because we know there are a lot of phenomena in our society, in our surroundings. I always explain this hypothesis in a very simple manner in the classroom. When I say to my students, look, the best way to understand is, suppose if I want to do a study in a classroom comprising of both girls and boys, and my study area is, my title is, my objective research question is to understand, to study who is physically strong in my, who are the people who are physically strong in my class? Physically strong in my class. Okay, I undertake a study this way. While undertaking, I also can formulate a hypothesis. Yes or no? Yes or no? What could be the possible hypothesis which I can formulate? What is a possible hypothesis?
Girls are stronger.
Yes. I can. That is general understanding, right? Boys are stronger than girls. Or there is a difference between the strength of boys in the class, because that is a general, it's not something which I have formulated myself. It's something because boys normally they are more energetic, they do a lot of exercises more than girls. But if on the contrary, healthy, if I check the healthiness of boys and girls, sometimes I would be saying girls are healthier than boys. Health has nothing to do with your strength. But here, if I have physical strength, if I say, I will say that yes, my hypothesis is in my classroom, boys are healthier than girls. This is a hypothesis number one. But this could be a general phenomena. Whether it can be true for in my class, I still don't know. Yes or no? Probably in my class, maybe I have got more athletic girls, but boys are not athletic because of the athleticism of the girls. Sometimes the girls could be more stronger than boys. If I keep a tug of war between two groups, sometimes the girls may win. I don't know. So my hypothesis is boys are stronger than girls, but I am still not sure. I need to test it. I need to test it. So my hypothesis statement will be boys are stronger than girls. It's a one-sided hypothesis, not a two-sided, one-sided. So I say boys are stronger than girls. Other one is alternate hypothesis, boys are not stronger than girls. Now, come to a hypothesis in research. This is a research hypothesis. Testing of hypothesis, what are the steps to be followed there? We convert our research hypothesis into statistical hypothesis. Because statistical hypothesis has got two parts. What are they? Null and alternate.
And alternative.
What is null hypothesis?
Null hypothesis, which is under testing.
Which is actually used for testing, which is you're nullifying your hypothesis. When I say boys are stronger than girls, I will say there is no difference between strength of boys and girls in my class. That is the null hypothesis, isn't it? There is no difference between in the strength of boys and girls in my class. But actually, my belief is what? There is difference in the strength of boys and girls. That is my actual hypothesis. But my null hypothesis here is there is no difference in the strength of boys and girls in my class. Now, ideally speaking, in your research, what should happen to your null hypothesis? Ideally speaking, it sometimes will never happen. But ideally speaking, what should happen to your null hypothesis? Can somebody tell me? Ideally speaking, your null hypothesis has to get rejected. Ideally speaking, your null hypothesis will have to get rejected because from the literature review or from your past studies, you have formulated your research hypothesis, isn't it? Are you able to understand me? This is a very tricky area. People often don't understand these things. See, when I say, I'll give you another example. Let me say, I'm doing a study of consumer behavior or consumer purchasing behavior. Okay, consumer buying behavior, and consumer buying behavior of maybe automobiles in India. I know that everybody can't afford to buy an automobile, a car. Can everybody afford? No. I need to have some disposable income, a greater disposable income or an income so that I can, disposable income is very much, high disposable income is very much necessary because only then I can repay my loan also if I take. Isn't it? Or maybe a steady income. Now, after having reviewed all this thing, I formulate a hypothesis. Okay. There is I formulate a hypothesis saying that there is a difference in the ability of salaried class versus the unorganized working class in the purchase of cars. There is a difference in the ability or the ability of a salaried class person when compared to a person, when I say salaried class, when compared to a person in the unorganized sector when it comes to purchase of cars. It sounds good, right? Because salaried class people are getting a standard income and they probably know that at the end of the month they'll be getting this much. But I'm not talking about entrepreneurs, leave alone the entrepreneurs, small businessmen and other things and all. I'm talking about people who are employed in unorganized, that is people who work on a daily wages or people who comes to these things. Does it sound good? It's true. We all believe that. So it is proven also. Isn't it? More or less it is proven that daily wages employees, they struggle a lot. Isn't it? Now this is a general majority view or majority phenomena which I have noticed through not only this, even though it is my statement, I have referred to various studies, various reports given by various agencies, and I am firming upon this. I believe that this is true. Now I put it as a hypothesis. Now when I put it as a hypothesis, this is something which I have read and I am 100% sure, right? But in my study, it need not be true sometimes. Ideally speaking, in my study also this should be true. Now if it has to be true, if my hypothesis has to be true, then my null hypothesis should be rejected. Isn't it? So I'm coming to a simple way. If my hypothesis has to be true, research hypothesis has to be true, then my null hypothesis has to get rejected. Yes or no? Have you got the point now? Now that is so, but sometimes in our research, our null hypothesis will never get rejected. Why is that happening? Can somebody tell me? Why is that happening? Why is it happening that sometimes in our research, our null hypothesis is not getting rejected? There could be many reasons.
Yeah, maybe
Yeah.
because the data collection may not be done in the right way.
Correct. That could be one possibility.
Maybe due to problems in sampling.
Sample, yes. Problems in sample. Data
Maybe
collection.
that, null hypothesis is taken on the basis of some general common principles, which are not easy to reject.
No. Here the problem is, if you are sure about your hypothesis, if you are sure about your hypothesis, if you've come to your hypothesis from sufficient studies, sufficient literatures, then ideally speaking, your null hypothesis should be getting rejected. But there are situations in which your null hypothesis may not get rejected. And that happens only when the reasons as pointed out, your sample is not proper, your data collection methods is not proper. When I say data collection method, probably your research questions, your questions in your questionnaire is not properly understood by your respondents. Research questions, the questions are not research questions, your your data collection instrument questions are not understood properly by your respondents. Okay, so all these things might happen. And these are the common errors which you point out in your research. So if this happens, then probably sometimes your null hypothesis doesn't get rejected. But does it mean that since it is not getting rejected, I'll make it reject? No, we should not do that. There is nothing wrong in there. We are talking about research. You just have to follow the process. Sometimes it may not get rejected. No problem. But when your null hypothesis is not getting rejected, you should not write, I accept the null hypothesis. Because never write, people know, this is a common mistake which I've seen. Either you reject or accept. No. You reject the null hypothesis, but you should never write in your research as, so henceforth I'll accept the null hypothesis. No. That means when you accept your null hypothesis, what you're doing actually is, you are basically destroying the basic premise of your review, and then we have already arrived at a research hypothesis. You are destroying that. So how to write? If you refer to any of the good research textbooks, any of the internationally renowned, any good text, they will say, what you should write is, I don't have sufficient evidence to reject null hypothesis. Please read the textbooks carefully. It is often the Indian textbook which create a lot of confusion and they destroy the entire research. This one. Indian textbooks say reject null hypothesis. No, never write it that way. If it is not getting rejected, what you should write is, from my study, I don't have sufficient evidence to reject null hypothesis. But still, what does that statement indicate? It indicates that I still believe on my original hypothesis because I have read thoroughly and I have come to that hypothesis. So I am not basically destroying my basic premise. Have you got it? So this is another common mistake which often we see. So never write that, and this for this, never read normal ordinary research methodology textbooks. Always read advanced research textbooks. There they'll explain it very clearly, because this is a huge important area. Hypothesis is not a simple area. It's a big area which is dealt in detail in most of the textbooks. Most often we fail to understand this thing properly. And this in thesis also we present it this way. I still know most of the theses which I receive, because I constantly receive from some of the from the universities in Hyderabad, Telangana, and some other places. People make this mistake regularly and I have to correct it and say that, look, because it is not that the research scholar has not done the work properly. Research scholar has done the work very well, but because of the conceptual clarity, because of lack of conceptual clarity, this confusion is created now. Okay, so that is another area. So when it comes to hypothesis is a very, very important, because as a researcher, from the reviews, I need to develop my hypothesis because I have some idea about what is the phenomena, what is the probable answer to my research question. All these things I develop from my reviews. Now, that again reinforces my earlier point, which is review of literature is the heart and soul of your research. So people often ask this question, why this? Normally, people spend a lot of time in reviewing. And review, and what I mean by review is, there is now when you write the review of literature chapter in your thesis, I come to that. People often write reviews in, say name of the author, bracket the year, and say in his study has done something. In 2 sentences he'll write. There's nothing wrong in writing 2 sentences. But most often what I found is, these reviews, whatever a student, a research scholar has applied, wrote in his thesis, these often happens to be a verbatim copy form from other theses. Literally a verbatim copied format from other theses. Now, this again is dangerous. A review that means you don't know anything about that area. You have to understand the article thoroughly, and you will have to come to your own conclusions and write it down in probably after reading the article. If you have to summarize this article in one paragraph, how will you summarize it? That is your review. Summarize it in one review and then transfer to your thesis. Don't merely copy it from, because when I review a work, I will not, maybe for my thesis, I may review it from one angle. I may not collect everything, explain my reviews. So, but a good reviewer always understands the entire article, then he reviews in his own in one paragraph, and that is what should appear in your thesis. So that is one common mistake, because we have trivialized this review of literature to such an extent today that most of the researchers don't even know how to write a review of literature. It has to, first you have to read thoroughly, assimilate everything what is written in the article, summarize it in your own words in a small paragraph. And this practice has to start from your first year of research itself, not when you sit down to review your write your thesis. And this is another thing which I've known. When you sit down, people often start writing the thesis in the final year, fourth year. That point of time, they sit down to write the review. That is only then you only do a copying work. And today you have got plagiarism software. Then what you do in that plagiarism software, you play around with some of the words, change the words, and what happens? The meaning itself gets changed. And then what we find is when you review that, the actual review which you have given, that is actually not the work which the other researcher has actually done, because by changing the verbs, adverbs, other things and all, you have totally changed his work also. And please remember, these are the common mistakes which normally we find. Okay, so this is the importance of review of the hypothesis and the review of literature. Now, after having done this, so you got a research problem. You understood the research problem from your reviews. You came with your research questions. From the research questions, you came to your hypothesis. This again, you have after a hypothesis, then everything is ready now. After this, so these are all your desk job which you do. Then you come to sit down to work out your methodology. What will I do? My objective, my research question is ready. My hypothesis is ready. So what do I do next? What do I do next? Now here, I look at the methodological approaches. First thing, what is my source of data? First question, what is my source of data? Do I have a sampling frame from where I can pick up my source? Do I have a sampling frame? If not, what is the sampling method which I should adopt from my study to pick up my respondents? What is my sampling? So a thorough knowledge about sampling, both probability as well as non-probability sampling, is required if you have to pick up your sample. Thorough knowledge about sampling as well as probability sampling as well as non-probability sampling. Then, after that, what is a research instrument? What instrument will I use to collect my data? Should it be a questionnaire? Should it be a schedule? Should it be something else? Or should it be an observation research? So what is a research instrument? Next one. Since I've listed out my research questions, to fulfill those research questions, what are the variables I should study and put it in my questionnaire? Since I've already put my research questions, what are the variables I should study to find out answer to my research question? So variables which are to be, so this also you'll have to identify and put it very clearly now itself. Now, where do you get the variables from? Again, from your reviews. Okay, barring the sampling methods for which you'll have to pick up some research methodology textbooks to understand the theory, because no articles will explain to you the sampling methods and all. That you'll have to take it from the research methodology or research textbooks and know that. But variables of study definitely comes from your review. You got it? So next is you firm up, and then you say whether which type of research design you have to adopt. Which type of research design? Should it be a descriptive research? Should it be a causal study? Causal means cause and effect relationship study, because basically the research design is divided into two. One is exploratory and conclusive, and conclusive is further divided into descriptive and causal. So you will have to decide whether which of the research designs you will adopt. So you get into this process. So all these things you will have to explain at this stage, which is the 6th, 7th, and 8th stage. Okay, 6th, 7th, 8th, which I put it. 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, I've broken up. All these things you will have to explain. This again in your paper itself. You have not gone to the collection of data still, but you should have a firm plan on all these things. So starting from your source. So now here again, while if you have to fulfill these steps in a systematic manner, because I said we are doing scientific research, if you have to fulfill these things in a scientific manner, if you have to fulfill your 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th step, or maybe even your 10th step, you again require good knowledge about research. And what are the knowledge you require? You require knowledge about different primary scales which are used in research for gathering data. You require knowledge about primary scales. What are primary scales? Can somebody tell me what are the primary scales in research? There are 4 primary scales in research. Every data, which you collect from a questionnaire represents any of one of the primary scales. What are they? Nominal scale, ordinal scale, interval scale, and ratio scale. You require knowledge about these primary scales, because each of your questions in your questionnaire or in any of the instrument, it represents any one of these scale. You got it? So you need to have some idea about your primary scales. It's not difficult at all. It's very simple. Because that is probably, I don't know whether anybody is there to explain to you the primary scales in research. But I am just broadly saying all these things together so that you can systematically explore these things from other, maybe clarify also. So primary scales, knowledge about primary scales, because each of your data represents, each of your questions represent one scale. And the highest order scale is always the interval scale, which is the absolute data. But you can't, absolute data in the sense like there is a 0 level, starting level, like height of a person, weight of a person, age of a person. These are all absolute data. So, but all data doesn't come in this absolute form. So there is another thing. The highest order scale is the ratio scale. Slightly lower order scale is the interval scale. Below that comes the ordinal scale, and the most lowest level scale is the nominal scale, which is used to identify alone. So anyway, I am not going to deal now because that is again a big area which I don't want to explain and confuse further. So knowledge about the scales has to come here, right? You also need to know have some idea about, which you need to study from outside, is your statistical analysis. That also has to be studied outside, right? So I don't think I need to explain these things in detail, because you know these things, how these things come. But 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, if you have to really formulate it properly, you will have to, besides your reviews, you will also have to study these things separately. About sampling, about review of this is what you say, that statistical things, about scales. There are separate chapters in research methodology for this. You have said only then comes we will be able to formulate your research instrument, which is your questionnaire. Got it? So once these things are ready with you, then the final 2 steps is very easy: implementing the research plan and then coming to our interpretations. You got it? So this is in brief which I wanted to explain about research. I know that being an afternoon session, I don't want to take a very lengthy section, because that is why I know it's always difficult for people to sit with cameras on and watch me. But I've just crystallized these things in the best possible manner in a very short way, so that next time you can further probably read these things, or maybe if you want some clarify some doubts and all, you can look into all these things, look and then clarify it further. And each of these things, for example, scaling techniques or scales in research, that itself is a separate area of research. A separate session is to be handled there. What are scales, primary scales, or how the scales are used in how each of this, which type of questions are represented in each scale? That is one separate thing. Why scales, understanding of scales is important is your type of analysis. Your type of analysis is totally influenced by only when you know the type of scales, you will be able to know which type of analysis has to be done. So all type of analysis cannot be employed on all type of scales. Please remember that. Highest order scale, which is the ratio scale, you can do any type of analysis there. But for a nominal scale, you can't do any type of analysis. So that is why a knowledge about scales is itself is to be handled in a separate session. Yeah, somebody has raised the question. Yeah. Somebody wants to ask me something. I see Prakash. Yeah, please ask question. Somebody wants to ask something. Anybody is there? Yeah.
Participants, we'll be having the question and answer session now. You may please clarify all your doubts. Sir is available over here to clear your doubts. So please raise your queries.
Yeah. See, this is, you can see. I know that this is not something which is very easy, because research expertise comes from years of research experience. It doesn't come naturally to anybody overnight. So even at this stage, I also learn a lot about research on a day-to-day basis. The more I sit with my scholars, the more I sit in doctoral committees or with other sessions and all, I come to know new things. So, and this is again, it is not that the techniques which you adopted for your research probably 10 years before, that is also, there is a change which is happening there also. Because, a few years back, for example, if you have gone through the thesis probably 10 years before, most of the people were, the highest type of analysis they used to do is like factor analysis, or maybe cluster analysis, or maybe a discriminant analysis. That stage has gone, and people have gone to next level of analysis, which is the cause and effect relationship analysis, which comes under SEM, structural equation modeling. Now that also has changed. And so this itself, research field itself is evolving. So there are a lot of changes which are happening, and unless otherwise you are in constant touch with research articles, with research scholars, with teachers, you will not be updated on a day-to-day basis as to what is happening in this area. So we even still we may do some blunders, or maybe answer things in a very wrong way. So blunders are definitely, but every blunder is actually leading to some learning exercises also. So you learn from each of the mistakes which you commit. So there is nothing wrong in thinking that I don't know anything about research, so if I ask a question, it will be wrong and it will be blunder. Nothing of that sort. We all started from there only. Unless the ways you question, unless the ways you constantly, and there is another thing, constantly among teachers and among researchers also, we should constantly interact. We should constantly interact, and we should challenge. We could challenge also. So by this way, what happens is, we also learn a lot. The more you interact, the more you learn, because these things cannot be read only from textbooks, from reviews, because it's a very laborious task. And you require the patience for all these things to read, because teachers, I know that most teachers, we are only good at lecturing. But when it comes to reading, sometimes we are bad. Okay, yeah, please. I think
So my doubt is regarding hypothesis. I did my research around 30 years back.
Yeah.
एंड द फैक्ट इज कि जब हमने रिसर्च की थी सर,
हाँ।
तब क्या होता था, आप पूरा रिसर्च कर लो, उसके बाद आप रिसर्च मेथोडोलॉजी का चैप्टर लिखो।
सही बोला
ये
आपने।
तरीका होता था,
हाँ।
है ना? और उस टाइम हमारा हाइपोथेसिस भी हमारे रिजल्ट के बेसिस पे फ्रेम होता था।
करेक्ट। नहीं, सिर्फ आपके नहीं, जब when I also did my research,
Yes, sir. This
almost
was
a
the
similar
fact.
thing happened.
Exactly.
Almost a
So,
similar thing happened. There is nothing,
yes.
no qualms in me saying these things and all. आपने जो भी कहा आपने बिल्कुल इसी तरह मैंने भी अपने रिसर्च किया था। Only difference was that मैंने उसके बाद जब मैंने एक आर्टिकल भेजा था, I still remember I have sent one article to this one of the premier institutes in the country. That was that time it was Xavier's Institute of Management. All of you must be knowing in Bhubaneswar. XIM, now it is a Xavier's University. तो वहां पे एक जर्नल है जिसका नाम है विलक्षण. Very good journal. It is in the UGC list also. So I still remember, but I still remember the person who reviewed that article also. And his editor was Mohanty ji. Professor Mohanty was the person, he's an ex-IIM person, and I received a very good feedback from him. So he found something good in my article, but he told me, please correct, these are the things, flaws which you have made, please correct it. So that is when, so a good review can help you a lot. So that's when I learned. So then after, it took almost 2 years for me to publish my article there. Then later on, उसके बाद मैंने 3-4 उसके बाद good journals I have published. Very good journals. Like for example, some of the IIM journals as well as from the international journals also. I was able to publish, but these steps were followed. That point of time, nobody told me these are things. So before the research and hypothesis has to be said, nobody told me. Madam, as you told me, we just for the sake of having a hypothesis, we incorporate this hypothesis in the thesis later at a stage. This is what happens.
Exactly, sir. We did that.
Yeah.
Exactly. But
So-
आज हमें लगता है कि बच्चों को गाइड करने के लिए हमें एक प्रॉपर तरीका मालूम होना चाहिए।
बिल्कुल सही कहना आपने। Yeah.
उसमें मुझे आज भी डाउट हुआ है सर, अभी तक भी
बोलिए।
क्लैरिटी नहीं
नहीं,
आई।
इसमें this is again मुझे भी अभी मैं कह सकता हूँ पिछले 3-4 साल में मैंने इसकी क्लैरिटी मैंने पाई। इससे पहले मुझे भी बिल्कुल क्लैरिटी इस टॉपिक पर। तो मैंने क्या किया, I just went to some of the good lectures on this topic. I'll suggest to almost all the research scholars and teachers, नापताल के जो material है, there is a professor from IIT Kharagpur. He has got videos on that. There is a professor from foreign university, I forgot his name. He has given, I got the entire video, some 45 videos of, I've downloaded everything. So chapter wise, for each 1 hour, it takes a lot of time to download all these things. I have kept it inside. So if I have to know this topic of hypothesis testing, I just went to his lectures 5 times, 6 times to understand these things. Then I also need to have a good textbook. It's not necessary just listen to lectures alone. So for that, I can suggest some good textbooks. Since all of you are in business management and commerce and social sciences, I'll suggest a good textbook by Professor Naresh Malhotra. It is on marketing research, but it's a very good textbook which explains everything. Naresh Malhotra, Professor Naresh Malhotra, he's an Indian, but he's not in India. He has been teaching in US. He's a very old man now. I happened to meet him personally also in some of the conferences. He settled in US. His textbook is excellent. Excellent textbook. He explains everything. It's a very bounded book. It explains everything. And you can look at his latest editions. He has published some 8 editions now. And he is the biggest authority in marketing research worldwide. Biggest authority and the #1 authority. And he has been listed in the US who's who. Every year in US you have got a ranking of who's who of the year. So who's who list, he has been ranked probably 15 times or something. It's a very, and the best part is,
Excuse me, sir, please repeat
topmost
name. Excuse me, sir, please repeat name of the book.
Naresh Malhotra, Marketing Research by Naresh Malhotra. Marketing Research by Naresh Malhotra. Okay. I have a soft copy of that also. I don't know how to send it. I have got to, because I have got some 3 editions of his soft copy. It is around 20 MB. You'll find the free editions also. So that is a book which and the good part is his articles. he is a person who, the biggest part of, best part of Naresh Malhotra is he publishes in the topmost journal in the world in research, which is Journal of Marketing Research, JMR. JMR is supposed to be the biggest or the #1 journal in research, Journal of Marketing Research. And here it discusses only on methodologies, marketing research methodologies, not on the work actually done. In JMR, he has got some 15 articles published. To get one article itself, it's not, I have still not found a single Indian who is in Indian universities who are published in JMR. I found Indians who have settled abroad in most of the foreign universities having published there, but I have not found an Indian who has published in JMR. That's a very most reputed journal, and he has published this. So it's not like I found his textbook to be really wonderful. I always suggest to almost all my research scholars and my students also when I teach this subject, because I've been teaching this subject for quite a long time. So I always suggest this textbook. And in that, as Madam said, hypothesis is a concept which has to be understood properly. Unless otherwise we understand this concept, it becomes very difficult. Because in simple terms, like it is a tentative answer to our research question. I formulate my research question and I answer to that research question. How do I answer? From all the reviews which I have done, I know the possible answer is this. But this I state as my research hypothesis, not null hypothesis. Research hypothesis. Now this has to be tested statistically. And please remember, testing of hypothesis, you only test your null hypothesis. So this research hypothesis is obviously your alternate hypothesis, in other words. So this has to be converted to null hypothesis first, because that is what you need to test. That is, you're nullifying your hypothesis. You're making it as non-existing, saying that there's no relationship, there is not true. So, and then you test it, which means, ideally speaking, null has to get rejected if your hypothesis has to be true. That is the logic. You have to, your null hypothesis should actually get rejected if your research hypothesis has to be true. And research hypothesis has to be true because that is a tentative answer. If that goes wrong, your tentative answer is wrong. So I think you'll have to sit down for a while and see the connections between these three. Sit down for a while and see the connections, because when I say this, the understanding is not that it doesn't become easy. Sit down and think for a while. Then we'll see, yes, logically this is right. So that slowly it has to percolate to all the research scholars so that they understand these things properly. And then it becomes easier. It doesn't, that's how it should be done. Yeah. Anything else?
Yes, sir. Sir, I want
see a lot
to
of
say, first of all,
yeah.
Yes, sir.
Boliye.
Sir, first of all,
Yeah,
I want
please.
to say that your way of presentation is very effective. Sir, my
Thank you,
question is
thank you.
that, sir, you discussed about primary skills, sir, and you
Yeah.
explained that as a researcher we must know about the scales. Maybe
Yeah.
it may be ordinal scales, maybe nominal scale, maybe interval scale. Sir, please
Yeah.
tell a brief insight about what are the primary skills. As a researcher,
Yeah.
we must have a ability to do to make proper notes, to find proper data, to use proper sample techniques. But sir, what are the primary skills?
Okay. Okay, as I've listed out, since you've asked this question, I'll just explain briefly. I said there are four
Yes,
primary scales in research: nominal, ordinal, interval, and ratio. In that order, I'm telling you. The lowest order scale is the nominal scale. And what is the scale? In nominal scale is, if you read this textbook of Naresh Malhotra, he explains this way, in a simple term. When in a 100-meter sprint race, let us take the example of a 100-meter sprint race. In 100-meter sprint race, each of the runners are identified by a number. Yes or no? Jersey number. Have you noticed that? Have you noticed? Similarly, let us take the football tournament. In a football tournament also, each of the players are identified by a jersey number. Yes? Okay. Why this jersey number is given? It is to identify him, right? You don't know. You cannot always know the person. Everybody, because number 10, because Neymar is number 10, Messi is number 10. We always say it's because we identify. Ronaldo is number 7, so we identify by a number. So this nominal scale is an identification scale. Remember that. It is something which is used to identify alone. It has got no further relevance. Preeti, have you got my idea? Preeti, Uda?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
It
Yes,
is an
sir. Yes, sir.
identification scale. It's a lowest order scale. You can't do much of an interpretation with these scales. It is merely an identification scale. Okay. In your questionnaire, you will have questions like this, like which are the brands of soaps which you buy? The person will list out 5 brands of soap. It is just an identification. It's a nominal scale. You can't come to any great inferences or interpretations from that nominal scales. Second type of scale is ordinal scale. Okay, in ordinal scale. What is ordinal scale scheme? It is a ranking scale. Ordinal scale is a ranking scale. What does it mean? In a football team, or maybe an Argentine football team, which has got 11 players, you have used nominal scale to identify these players, starting from maybe jersey numbers. Now, the second level, if somebody is asking you to rank these 11 players based on the competency, the best players to the last, how will you do that? It is again, we all know through the experience that, okay, best player would be Messi, number 1, first rank. Second, maybe Dave yesterday's that Copa America match. What's his name? Who scored the goal? His name is Angel, Maria Angel. So he is number 2. We'll say, or number 3. We'll rank. Now we'll rank. So this is a what scale? Ordinal scale.
Ordinal, sir. Ordinal.
Yeah, ordinal scale, ranking scale. Okay. Now come to the, in simple form, now come to the third type of scale. So in question research also we may ask a lot of scales, a lot of questions on ranking. Please rank the following following soaps in the order of your preference, from 1 to 5. So what do we do? It's a ordinal scale. You got the point? Yeah? It's an ordinal scale. Now coming to the third type of scale, which is the interval scale. In ordinal scale, what happened was, you rank the players, given players, in the basis of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or till 11. But the distance between the first rank and the second rank, and the distance between the second rank and the third rank, it is not constant. Is it constant? Like in a classroom, you rank 50 students. The person who gets the highest score will say first rank. Then comes the, maybe a person scores 1 mark less than the best person, he is given the second rank. The third person would be 30 marks less than the second rank person, he is given third rank. Similarly, the fourth person would be just 2 marks lower than the third person, he gets fourth rank. So there is no specific distance between the first rank and the second rank and the third rank and the fourth rank. Yes or no? In ordinal scale, that is
ordinal scale,
but in interval is not the. But in interval scale, there is a specific distance between, which is constant between 2 individual parameters. You got it? So specific distance is defined. So if you look at some of the Likert scales which we use, maybe a 5-point scale or a 7-point scale, you ask person, like for example, I strongly agree to strongly disagree. 5-point scale, strongly agree, neither agree nor disagree, strongly disagree. 5-point scale. And how do we define that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What is the difference between each of these points? 1. It's constant. When scales are given that way, that type of question comes under interval scales. Specific intervals are defined. Okay, if questions come in that format, it is called coming under interval scales. Fourth one, ratio scale. This is an absolute scale. It is a highest order scale, absolute scale. In the sense, the starting point is 0. The starting point for a ratio scale is 0. Height of a person. Starting point has to be 0. Yeah? Age of a person. Temperature, is it a ratio scale? Temperature, is it a ratio scale? Tell me that. No. Starting point is not 0 for temperature. It's minus. It goes minus also. So, got it? All those measures wherein the starting point is 0, which is an absolute scale measure, this comes under ratio scale. How many such, can you get data in that way from an absolute scale? Very difficult. Studies of perception, studies of attitude, studies of learning, level of learning, you can't have absolute scales. So always you employ interval scales or maybe ordinal scales, isn't it? So in social sciences or in commerce or in management, we always use these type of scales for in our questions. And then comes for each of these questions, you have a statistical tool to analyze also. Am I clear with that question which you asked me, Preeti?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Clear.
So this isn't simple about the primary scales which are used in research, and you need to have that knowledge. And I like the way in which Naresh Malhotra has explained in his book these 4 scales. Very nicely he has explained, using the examples and all. Okay. Yeah.
So can we know the name of publication? This
I think it's Pearson publication. One sec, I'll just I have the book with me. I don't know where I've kept it. I think it is Pearson only. Yeah, it's Pearson. I normally get a complimentary copy every year. Whenever new editions come, I get a new copy because I've been following this book regularly. So I get a complimentary copy every year about this. It's a very good book.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Yes.
Sir, I want one doubt.
Yeah.
How will selective test for testing a hypothesis? It's based on our research or selection of data or our null hypothesis. What's the base for selecting a testing of hypothesis?
See, again, it all depends on what data you have collected. Never ever, I don't know what data. See, the type of data which you collect. That's why it is not that requires you for going for a specific type of testing. Now, some people test t-test is used because the data which you collected is good enough for a t-test. For some, if it is more than 2 samples, we go for a ANOVA. So these are not things to which I can answer you. It all depends on what data you have collected. I have to see the data in which you have collected to really answer this question. Got the point? So never go with a predetermined mind that I will use this test. If that is the case, your questionnaire should be good enough to capture those data. So all these things are connected to each other. Please remember that. It is not something which I can say at this point of time. Got it? So it all depends on the data which you have collected, how you have collected all these things. Yeah.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
But the best way is to, whenever after having collected, best way is you refer to the reviews. What tests probably a review in the review in the research article? What test the researcher has used when he has collected data in this form? Either which test he has used, that probably you can adopt here also. So the review actually explains you everything.
Okay. Okay, so because I am a beginner, so
okay, yeah, no problem. See, I think these doubts will come, but for the best part is whenever such doubts come, I think you should first part you should review some literature. Second part is you also need to know the theory in this, maybe scaling techniques, in sampling, scaling, then things like that. All these things should be known to you. Only then you can. Okay, that is these are the prerequisites, because in between, otherwise if somebody tells also, you will not understand anything.
Okay, sir. Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Yes.
Sir, I have a question.
Yeah.
That sometimes what happens is that you do a lot of review and then you see that different methodologies have been adopted to test the same problem.
Correct.
So one of my research areas, I found that the same data could be used for a panel as well as time series.
Correct.
And so that time, how do you know or how do you decide which is a better methodology to adopt for you to get into a correct,
Correct.
your results? So
Correct. So you
that's
see,
what
yeah. So this is one question which, as a researcher, you will have to take a stand. How you will take a stand? Now, your ultimate goal through research is the most important thing here. Your ultimate goal is, we all know, and today we undertake a research, and I know if I do good quality research, my chances of my career progression is also very high. My chances of because my chances of career progression is very high. If I'm able to publish my article in some of the best of the journals, my career progression is very high. So the more rigor, if I'm able to build in my analysis and in a most recent method, my chances of getting my article published also becomes high. Isn't it? So that should be your goal. Most rigorous, most appropriate, most recent technique. That you adopt, because that enables you to get your work published easily. And by publishing in a good journal, my career progression also increases, because all these are connected to your ultimate goal. Especially in academics, we publish, the question, the formula was publish or perish. You publish, good publication, you become very prominent. Your chances of career growth, your everything increases. So if that is my ultimate mantra, then I answer my question that way. Let me employ the best technique. So never go to the easy method. That is the only suggestion which I can give. Because my chances of getting getting my article published is more, probability is very high when I do that, look at things that way. Otherwise, my chances of publication will reduce.
Thank you, sir. I have one more question. You
Yeah.
were mentioning about certain videos from a foreign author. I missed the name.
And the foreign author's name, even I have to take it from my laptop, in another laptop. But other one I can say, in NPTEL. You know that NPTEL? Yeah?
Okay.
IIT Kharagpur, that professor is there. Let me open my another system. He's from IIT Kharagpur. I have got a whole series of his videos.
Okay.
It's maybe around 30 GB or 40 GB. He has explained these things in maybe around 60 lecture classes.
Oh,
each 1 hour classes. Huh?
Okay, sir.
So I think you can draw this. I don't know, because my system is opening. I have that, but I don't know remember the names of these people. But it's a very nice work.
Okay, sir. All
But
right, thank you.
the NPTEL, you can just type in marketing research lecture videos, or research methodology lecture videos. You can be NPTEL. Immediately this will crop up.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else? I think we have.
Participants, do you have any further doubts?
I'm really happy, because I think it was enjoyable for me also when I get some responses, some questions at least like this. So that means people have been listening to me. Most often when questions don't come, I feel that either people have not listened to what I have said, they have not understood what I have said. It could be many conclusions could be drawn, because normally I don't allow things to be that silent, because I always make people to ask questions, and because I make things as simple as possible. So there's some questions need to come from the audience side. So I'm very grateful, very thankful. Yeah.
Yes, that was really an informative session. So they might have eagerly heard you about that.
Okay.
And so you didn't let us sleep. It was an afternoon session, but you didn't let us sleep. It was very intriguing and engaging as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah. If I had given the PPT, then all of you would have gone and slept. So I didn't want the PPT to be shown, because it's better. And PPT is one thing, is you download everything and you keep it somewhere inside. You'll never go through that also. I've been attending FDPs and other things and all. This becomes your somewhere in your laptop or in your system. You'll feed it and keep it. Nothing will happen. So it's better not to give this PPT other things and all. Any discussion, face-to-face discussion is always better. Yes.
Sir, I want to add something. That's
Yeah.
why I said that its session is very informative and unique because today's concept क्या है कि हर कोई PPT के through जो अपने points clear करता है. That's why I said कि session is very impressive.
Thank you. Thank you.
And
Thank
a
you.
unique way is presented by you, sir. It's our pleasure. आप अगर अपना contact number share करें तो sir.
Yeah. I can share my contact number. Yeah, 94478
94478
54270. 54270.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you. Yeah. It would be advisable if you can send any queries or anything through my email ID, because
Sir,
email ID is better. I can just type in the messages box. You can just okay, that would be better because
Sure, sir.
j.johnny@gmail.com. Just see if it is.
Yes, sir. It is available.
Yeah, j.johnny@gmail.com. Okay, so that would help me a lot. Yes.
So I think it was a very fruitful session, and it's time to wind up. Before that, participants, please don't forget to fill the feedback form for the session. The link is available in the chat box. So please don't forget, it is very necessary. So I now invite.
One more thing. I was very happy that after years of I was able to speak at least few words in Hindi, because I have lost touch with Hindi, because even though I was born and brought up outside the state, the Kerala state, for the last 15 years I've been in the state only. But otherwise my studies, everything was from outside the state, and a few interactions through Hindi. Maybe my Kerala friends would be surprised as to how come he's speaking in Hindi and all, because I'm used to speaking in Hindi with my friends still. So that has enabled me, but I was very conscious that the majority of the other participants are from Kerala. So that's why I deliberately cut short my Hindi conversation and came back to this English itself. Okay. Anyway, it was nice.
Hanji sir, I was also surprising whether you will be able to understand in Hindi or not.
No. I know very well. I know. In fact, I studied, my second language was Hindi only. My first was English and second was Hindi. No problem.
Sir, indeed, a very informative session. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Oh, yeah.
Okay. So now I invite Chundal Alfred Deepti, Assistant Professor, Providence Women's College, to render the vote of thanks. Deepti ma'am, you are on mute. Please unmute yourself. Ma'am, it's not audible. Kindly check your audio. Not yet, ma'am.
I think the system, you'll have to unmute it. Maybe control point is there only, no? It is not getting unmuted. I think some issues there. No problem. Better not get tensed off these things and all. So that is okay.
Maybe some technical issues with the lab.
Yeah, no problem.
So
that is okay.
Without any further ado, let me continue with that job. So anyway, it was a very fruitful session. I think being the teachers, you have actually shown us a technique through which we can actually engage the students. That is not to present a PPT and we need to tell them to on the camera, so that the session will turn out to be a very useful one. So thank you for that, sir. Thank you for giving us that tip. And about the research side, you have given us very valuable points for both the newcomers to the field of research and also for those who are highly engaged in the research activities. Thank you so much, sir. So thank you for spending your valuable time with us.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that, the interactions which I had with all of you. It was really useful for me also. I could connect with a lot of people from across the country. That itself is the greatest opportunity for me. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, bye.
Thank you, sir.
Okay then, all the best. Thank you.